Recently, the AI chatbot ChatGPT has been taking the internet by storm, with people asking it everything from simple questions like what should I have for lunch to more complicated questions like how can I become a millionaire to some of the most complicated questions the universe has, like what is the purpose of life? And given the fact that over the years, I've created a number of videos asking others about different aspects of things like the car market or even the SBA, I thought this would be the perfect chance to ask artificial intelligence what their thought is of the used car market. So I decided to start off the questioning with a fairly simple and straightforward question of what is going on with the used car market. At which point, ChatGPT gave a relatively accurate answer to the question, referencing things like the pandemic, an increase in demand, and inventory issues as to why the market is shifting. I will say the only inaccurate aspect of this answer was the fact that the car market was shifting because people are staying home more and traveling less, which would be much more accurate if we were still in 2020, but isn't quite the case in 2023. And even then, during the pandemic, there wasn't demand for economical cars exclusively. The demand was across the entire automotive industry, regardless of the vehicle, size, fuel economy, age of vehicle, and more. I also asked the question of when is vehicle inventory going to return to normal, and the answer was so cookie cutter that I thought it was a dealership answering for a second.
Right, I can't predict the future in 6 months.
Well, the chatbot did say that it's very difficult to determine when inventory will go up. As the economy improves and more people return to work, demand for larger, more expensive vehicles may increase, which could also help bring inventory levels back to normal. And I think that this is one of the few answers that ChatGPT gave that really showed that in many ways this system is outdated, depending on what types of questions you're asking. Because in a normal economic environment, I think that this advice is relatively spot on. And post-COVID, this advice is spot on. But it doesn't take into account the fact that in 2021, the economy seemed to be booming, and this was in turn the cause for why the car market crashed to begin with, because there was so much demand for cars and there wasn't enough inventory. And so this answer is alluding to the fact that once the economy improves, once things return back to normal, then the car inventory will also return to normal in the process. But as we know, that isn't exactly what's happening in 2023, and instead we're seeing an increase in inventory due almost solely to the fact that demand has decreased because of economic conditions, as well as repossessions and a slight uptick in vehicle manufacturing, which are all contributing factors to declining prices. Though there is no doubt that over the last couple of years, there has been an overall shift to more expensive, luxurious vehicles over more economical, basic ones. When asked what type of used car is the best one to buy, ChatGPT gave generic but overall good advice, stating that you should look into things like recalls, fuel efficiency, reliability, as well as the vehicle history by running things like a Carfax. So definitely advice that you can find on different corners of the internet, but helpful nonetheless. I then pivoted the discussion to buy a car, and I asked the chat if there was any advice for negotiating at a dealership. And the advice was once again a little bit generic, but overall really solid, stating that you should do your research, be prepared to walk away, be confident, and don't be afraid to ask for discounts. It also goes on to tell you to be aware of additional fees and financing options, which is great because this is something that many unaware buyers end up getting sucked into whenever dealerships have these junk fees that they rebrand as required fees, which just isn't the case. I also asked what time of year is the best time to buy a car. And the AI stated that the end of the year when car salesmen are trying to meet targets, as well as early fall and late summer when new models are arriving. And it even went as far as to say that you may want to check out deals on holidays, and that being flexible in the car you want to buy may lead to a better deal. Which is true, but typically this is something that I like to advise against. And I'm a firm believer of figuring out exactly what you want to buy and then sticking to those sets of guidelines until you find the perfect car in your perfect price range. I believe that having flexibility with the type of car that you want to buy could end up leading to you settling on the car that you purchased, which then could lead to buyer's remorse, which is never a good thing. I also think that flexibility with the car you want to buy can sometimes leave you vulnerable to, in some cases, being taken advantage of at a dealership. For example, settling for a car that may be a bit out of your price range simply because it's the only car available today. Or alternatively, choosing a feature or a color you didn't want or passing on one you wanted simply because of convenience. At the end of the day, you have to live with this car for a long time. There's no reason to settle. When it comes to prices, I asked ChatGPT about what resources are best to compare prices online, and it referenced some of the resources that myself and many other people use every day, including KBB, Edmunds, NADA Guides, Car Gurus, and more. One question that we've talked about at least a dozen times on this channel over the last couple of years is why are cars so expensive? And why have they gotten so expensive in this relatively short period of time? Now, of course, supply and demand was a huge factor when it came to used cars, but what about new cars? So I decided to ask the artificial intelligence to get their take. And the response was a variety of different factors, including things like tariffs, regulatory costs, research and development, production, increased competition, as well as higher demand. And while I agree with some of these, I also think some of these other answers, while they may have an effect, aren't the main reason why we've seen such a dramatic increase in new cars across the board. Of course, with the exception of Tesla, who recently slashed their prices. But of course, we can't talk to ChatGPT without asking them the elusive question that we've all been wondering and speculating over the course of the last couple of years, which is when will used car prices crash and when will the market hit its bottom? And once again, the answer was pretty good, though it was more in line with when car prices will fall, not necessarily when prices will hit their bottom, stating things like the economy, consumer demand, and even seasonality, which will have an effect on used car prices going forward. And then when I specifically asked when car prices would hit their bottom, the chatbot took a long time to think, like a really long time. And then it came up with an error message, so even it doesn't know. In the process of making this video, I also asked a variety of other questions, including which cars depreciate the most, and the chatbot went into details about what causes depreciation, as well as what types of cars traditionally depreciate faster, but it didn't go into details about makes or models. And honestly, I don't know that I necessarily agree with the list that the chatbot provided. I also asked what types of red flags you should look out for when buying a car, and the advice was good, stating that you should look out for things like rolled back mileage, rust, clean vehicle history. I even asked about Carvana and whether or not Carvana was going to go bankrupt, and ChatGPT had no idea what I was talking about. At the end of the day, this was just a fun experiment that I wanted to try, and while ChatGPT is a very cool and fun tool to use in order to get some generic but good advice, I don't know if I would trust artificial intelligence in leading me in the correct direction of when and how I should buy my next used car. And while I wouldn't use this chatbot as a real valid way to go about doing your due diligence whenever you're buying your next car, it still is extremely impressive to see how clear and concise all of these answers are, and it feels like you're talking to a real person, or at the very least, real paragraphs and sentences that a person put together. And the fact that it is entirely artificial intelligence is sometimes hard to wrap your mind around. And while the answers were a little vague and generic, they were overall pretty accurate, which is impressive in itself. And in some cases, these answers were even more accurate than the time that I gave dealerships a call a few months back to ask them about the car market. So the question is, who do you trust more, artificial intelligence or a car salesman? I don't know. But like always, you guys, I hope that you enjoyed this video. If you have any questions, comments, if you have anything to add, make sure to leave a comment down below. And while you guys are at it, make sure to hit the like button, hit that subscribe button, and hit that notification bell. And I will see you guys in the next video.